welcome to Stillspeakpod. I'm back with more updates on the ongoing unraveling of the Murdaugh family. The lawsuits, lawyers, and investigation lists are piling up. Not only is Alex Murdaugh nosediving, but people he seemed to have surrounded himself with over the years are nosediving as well. I'm feeling awfully grateful to not know this family in any way, shape, or form. You either end up dead, charged, destroyed, or broke if you know this family. Now, Beaufort lawyer Corey Fleming's license to practice law was suspended by the South Carolina Supreme Court on Friday, following the allegations that he helped Alex Murdaugh to divert funds in the wrongful death settlement intended for the sons of the Murdaugh family housekeeper, Gloria Satterfield. Corey received an interim suspension by the High Court, and it's similar to the one that Alex Murdaugh got a month ago. And the suspension came after a court filing attached to a lawsuit that was filed on September 15, in which it accused Corey Fleming of assisting Alex in routing money to Alex's personal account, more than $3.5 million in settlement money that was meant for Gloria's sons. We discussed Corey Fleming in the episode where we discussed the Stephen Smith case, and then we discussed him again in another episode. I believe the one with Stephen Smith was episode 2 of this series. I didn't double check that, but I'm almost positive. Corey was connected to a few people mentioned in the Stephen Smith Highway Patrol investigation file. He was also the lawyer that Connor Cook hired for a short period of time after Alex Murdaugh recommended Corey Fleming to Connor Cook after the boat crash that killed Mallory Beach. Corey Fleming was Alex's college roommate and close friend. He was also the godfather to the murdered son, Paul Murdaugh. So, I should say. Now, we talked about Gloria and a few other episodes as well, and I actually want to stop there for 1 second because I've noticed that my very first episode of the Murdaugh family got like 6,000 views or something, and there's a lot of comments on it because it seems that people didn't realize that it wasn't my only video about the Murdaugh case, and so they're commenting things that we later discussed that have unfolded. And so I've commented a few times just saying, yeah, I know that happened. We already discussed that in another video. And I'm just letting you know that so you can go listen to the other video. So this is one of many videos I've done about the Murdaugh case. I don't even know how many there are right now. I actually should check that. Just know that if you're listening to this right now, there's many other ones. Just scroll through my videos and you'll see them. But anyway, we discussed Gloria, and, she died in what was described as a trip and fall accident on the Murdaugh property in 2018. Her death is currently under criminal investigation by SLED. And to just remind you, I like to always remind you of this, SLED stands for South Carolina Law Enforcement Division. The investigation began after the double murder of Maggie and Paul Murdaugh. Many investigations have been opened since the death of the two members of the prominent family. Paul and Maggie's death was opened. Then, based on information from their death, it led SLED to open an investigation into Stephen Smith's death. Another investigation was opened into the shooting of Alex Murdaugh, which we later learned was his own doing in an insurance fraud scheme that he planned with help from another. Although that man, Curtis Edward Smith, claims he was the fall guy and that there was no such plan and Alex set him up. Immediately after the botched plan, Alex admitted to drug use and resigned from his law firm. And then we quickly learned after that he actually was made to resign after the law firm had hired a forensic accountant to look into Alex's misappropriating of funds into the millions. We're now hearing it was over 10 million. And this led into another investigation open into the connection to the family dynasty. Not long after that, it was announced that SLED opened another investigation into the death of housekeeper Gloria Satterfield from 2018. So now you can look at Paul and Maggie, you can count them as one investigation because it was a double murder, or you can have them separate if you're going by person, not event. Then you got Stephen Smith, Alex's shooting, Alex's misappropriating of funds, and then Gloria Satterfield's investigation. So lots of investigations. And that doesn't include all the lawsuits that have been filed as well. According to the Satterfield lawsuit, Murdaugh had suggested to the sons of Gloria that they employ his friend and college roommate, Corey Fleming, as their attorney so they can win a fair wrongful death settlement from him. As I said earlier, Alex also recommended Corey Fleming to Connor Cook as well in regards to the boating crash. Later, Corey Fleming suggested that another associate banker, Chad Westendorf, take over as their representatives, and the brothers, the sons of Gloria, agreed to that. The lawsuit states that Corey Fleming made separate wrongful death claims, one for $505,000 and one for $3.8 million. And there were checks attached to the filing showing that Corey Fleming wrote the checks to Forge, Forge, which is a reference to an Atlanta-based firm, Forge Consulting LLC. The company helps clients structure settlements to stretch over time. However, the lawsuit alleges that the checks didn't go to Forge in Atlanta, but instead to a P.O. box in Hampton County under the direction of Alex Murdaugh. More than $3.5 million was sent by Corey Fleming via Murdaugh to Forge. Corey Fleming apologized, but he also blamed Alex Murdaugh. When it came time to disperse the settlement funds, Mr. Fleming trusted his close friend and colleagues to deal with him truthfully and honorably, only to be misled and deceived in one of the worst possible ways for a lawyer. Alex Murdaugh lied to Mr. Fleming to steal client funds. That was a statement from Corey Fleming's lawyer. Corey Fleming's suspension is a placeholder while the South Carolina Court Office of Disciplinary Counsel investigates. If they determine the allegations are founded, it will forward its findings to the Commission on Lawyer Conduct, and then the commission then will determine if there was indeed misconduct and recommend a sanction to the High Court. So, yeah. So now even Corey is in some deep water here. He also has a lawsuit against him from the brothers. We talked about that in my last video if you want to hear about that. Now here's another lawsuit we can add to the list. But first, let's go over the various lawsuits like we did in the last video, just as a reminder. And these are the lawsuits that have Alex's name in it. There's one involving the mother of Mallory Beach due to the boating crash. There's one filed by Connor Cook where he alleges that Alex Murdaugh was orchestrating a campaign to blame him, not Paul, his son, for the boating accident. There was a lawsuit with the insurance company who did not want to pay out for the boating accident. And then there's one with the missing money involving Gloria's sons. At this point, I need a large whiteboard in my garage because this case is just wild. And now, to add to the list, we have Alex Murdaugh being sued by his own family's law firm this past week after confessing to using a fraudulent bank account to siphon the millions for his personal use. The law office of Peters, Murdaugh, Parker, Ellsroth, and Detrick, run in part by at least 3 other Murdaughs, in their lawsuit said that Alex Murdaugh was converting clients and PMPED money to his own personal use using a bank account for a fictitious entity that provides no services and makes no products for sale. And he was able to steal these funds by disguising disbursements from settlements as payments to this fictitious entity. Murdaugh was confronted on September 3rd and admitted to converting the monies owed to PMPED and his clients for his own personal use. Now that was on the 3rd. On the 4th is when his shooting occurred. And immediately after, I believe it was the very next day, is when he resigned and admitted to having a drug problem. And then the day after that, we learned that he was actually forced to resign because of this. PMPED has reimbursed all client trust accounts who have suffered a known loss from the fraud and expects more to emerge. The lawsuit did not specify how much Alex Murdaugh had taken in all. And Jim Griffin, one of his defense attorneys, actually called the lawsuit a very sad development. He told the Post and Courier, quote, Alex holds every member of the firm in very high esteem. He has pledged his full cooperation with the firm. About 3 weeks ago, on September 15th, it was Maggie Murdaugh's birthday. She would have been 53 years old. And a friend had spoken out, actually several friends. And they said, quote, she has been lost in all of this, unquote. Debbie Bishop Phillips spent a good deal of time with Maggie, tailgating at college football games and exercising and painting classes. She said that they were really good friends and she misses her greatly. Quote, if she was your friend, there was nothing she wouldn't do for you. She always made you feel welcome, unquote. Camille Welch had known the Murdaughs for 25 years, and their sons attended school together and they spent many summers together, and she described Maggie as always fun and laughing and upbeat. They often went shopping and to festivals together. Quote, Maggie has kind of gotten lost in all of this. She was a good friend, and I really miss her a lot. Her mom and dad are wonderful people. I feel so bad for them, and I think about them a lot. I know the whole family is going through a lot, unquote. And I mean, we have to agree with them, right? Because they really have been lost in all this. What started as, to our knowledge, the double murder of these 2 family members has turned into this, what we've been discussing nonstop. You know, it's just been one thing after another, which then unfolded and exposed possible connection to Stephen Smith's death in 2015, and then also Gloria Satterfield's death in 2018, and then the boating accident, which led up to the double homicide, and then Alex's shooting and misappropriating of funds, and so on and so forth. Now, the boating accident actually did get a lot of coverage when it happened, and so was the charges against Paul and that whole thing. But really, most of the public didn't hear about this story until the death of Paul and Maggie in June. And there's one person we've heard little about because he's been flying under the radar for some time now. He has not even spoken out about his mother and brother's death. That is the only surviving son left of Alex Murdaugh, which is Buster Murdaugh. He's 25 years old. And there was some allegations by the Wall Street Journal that Buster Murdaugh was kicked out of the University of South Carolina School of Law in 2019 due to plagiarism. And there hasn't been anything that has actually verified this information, so that's not for certain. He did have plans to work at the law firm that his family had started almost 100 years ago and where his father was practicing at. And recently, a tabloid actually got pictures of him at one of their properties in Colleton County, and he seemed to be with another family member. Alex Murdaugh's claim is that he set up this whole insurance scheme plot to have himself killed so that his son can get the life insurance policy money. And we really haven't heard much about Buster. He's really been quiet. He hasn't said anything about all of this that has unfolded with his father as well. And I personally stumbled upon information that I personally have not seen yet or heard about yet. You may have. But that was that the day after Paul and Maggie were found shot to death, the door to Paul's apartment was found ajar. And that's a little suspicious, right? However, officers didn't really find any signs of forced entry or anything of the sort. They did not notice anything out of place, nor did they find anybody inside the apartment, and they just kind of shut the door, and that was that. In the weeks after the double homicide, the SLED, South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, did search the apartment, and they took a computer, probably some fingerprints and DNA samples for evidence and whatnot. I'm not kidding. I need a whiteboard, okay? Because you have all these lawyers that are involved in this, and then you have lawyers of the lawyers involved in this. Then you got Stephen's case, you got Gloria's case, you got the boating accident, you got Paul and Maggie, you got Alex and his shenanigans. Now you have Corey Fleming, who's gotten himself into some hot water as well. And so there's just, oh my goodness, so many investigations and charges and lawsuits just keeps piling up and piling up. I was going through this, and I actually had to go back in my notes a few times because I'm like, all right, let me make sure I got this because I don't want to forget any of these investigations or lawsuits, and it's sometimes just really hard to keep track of. There's just so many of them. So this story isn't ending anytime soon, right? Because we got to see how this all pans out, how all these lawsuits pan out, what's going to come from the investigation that SLED has now opened. And I know that they did call in the FBI for help due to the amount of cases that they had to open in connection to this family. Meanwhile, Alex is still in rehab. And clearly, he's not going to be able to pay like most of these lawsuits. I mean, I think that's a given. But it may break him, and he may actually end up taking his own life rather than to hire somebody again. I guess we'll see how that goes. Not that I'm wishing that on anybody, no family. I'm just saying it might actually take him to the breaking point because this is just piling up and piling up. And with most of these investigations being connected back to this family, it's mostly Alex that it's connected back to. And I'm sorry, I'm going to say it again. I said it in my last video. I think that he is partly responsible or fully responsible for the death of his son and wife, allegedly. Relax, Alex Murdaugh, don't come for me. I don't need a lawsuit against me, but I think you're too busy with your own lawsuits. Anyway, in my very first episode about this case, I went into how this family name seems to be pronounced 3 different ways. And I explained that I even heard some family members saying it differently from one another. And that Google was saying Murdaugh is how you actually pronounce it. And I had to weigh it out, and I thought, you know what? The last name really doesn't matter in the grand scheme of the story. It doesn't. So I had to make a judgment call to just go with Murdaugh, because that's how technically it's pronounced by the way it's spelt. And sometimes people don't know how their last name originally is supposed to be said. I have a very tricky last name. Both of my last names, my maiden name and my married name, are tricky names and can be said several different ways. But based upon that, I had to make this judgment call to just say Murdaugh, okay? And somebody commented the other day and was like, the family says Murdaugh, period. And I replied to that person saying, well, I already explained this, that I heard the family members saying something different from one another. Alex Murdaugh in the 911 call about his son and Maggie, it sounds to me like he's saying Murdaugh, dog. And I heard Paul say it like Murdaugh, like I'm saying it. So listen, Murdaugh is D-O-C-K. I don't know what to tell you, okay? If you're focused on that, I don't know what to tell you. I at least explained and acknowledged that there's different ways of saying it, apparently, and that I had decided to go with this way. If you don't want to listen to me because I'm not saying it the right way, so be it. Given the million different branches of this case, I really don't think it matters. It really doesn't. Because here's the thing. This family name is now destroyed. So it really doesn't matter. And I actually saw an article where one of his defense lawyers actually said that he knows many people say it different ways and he doesn't correct them on how Alex says it. So there's that, okay? His own lawyer has my back here. You say Murdaugh, I'll say Murdaugh, okay? If somebody wants to say Murdaugh, go for it. I don't care. So on this channel, I don't come to you every time there's one piece of breaking news or rumor or what have you. I just think that's kind of pointless and ridiculous. And after a while, you get kind of sick of it because you're like, you were just posted a video about this case. Now you're posting another video? Well, because sometimes multiple things happen at once. So what I've been doing is I wait until there's a couple updates that makes it worthy enough to come to you with information. We have a lot to follow. So expect more videos on the case as these all kind of start to pan out a little bit more and we hopefully get some more information or some resolve some of these lawsuits and investigations. So, but I'm not going to come to you every single time because I'll just drive you absolutely insane. So the saga continues. The unraveling of the Murdaugh family. Like I said, when we began this video, I, for one, am very grateful to not know this family. And I'm sure you are too. So until next time, I'll see you soon.